Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to the labor and delivery story of this little guy here. Say hi to Theodore. He is 5 days old. I can't believe it. I'm 5 days post C-section and I wanted to sit down and tell you guys his labor and delivery story before I forget. I wrote down everything a few hours after it happened, so hopefully I'll share with you all the details. And I'm just so excited. I can't believe he's here. What a whirlwind. Oh my gosh, it was the craziest and fastest thing ever, like the most unexpected. If you're brand new here, my name is Erika. This is my second son. My first son is 2.5 years old. His name is Hugo, and I had a really awful labor and delivery with him. I ended up with a 4th degree tear and a rectal tear, so we opted for an elective C-section this go around. It was medically necessary, but it was my choice. And so originally his C-section was planned for November 18th. I was going to be 38 weeks and 6 days, which is to the day that I went into labor with my first son. And so part of me was like a little bit nervous, thinking, am I gonna make it to 38 weeks, 6 days? I don't know. Well, turns out I most certainly did not. If you have been following along with this whole journey, then you'll know that when I turned 36 weeks, I had some early labor signs. I experienced some really severe contractions that night, and they did go away come the morning. I went to see my doctor and she was like, okay, if that happens again, make sure you call me, because we don't want you, being that you are having a scheduled C-section, we don't want you laboring at home for too long, because you can go from 1 centimeter dilated to 8 centimeters in a blink of an eye, and we just want to make sure that we have the OR prepared. So okay, I had that in my head. Then I turned 37 weeks, and I said in that 37-week pregnancy update, which of course ended up being my last one, I totally jinxed it. I said in that update that week 37 was really chill, like nothing, no new crazy symptoms. And for the most part that was true. So when I was 37 weeks 4 days, I believe, I think that was the Monday. Was it Monday? Yeah, it was the Monday. 37 weeks 4 days. Let me just get the date for you. Yeah, it was Monday, November 9th. So Monday, November 9th is when, like, I feel like some of the symptoms started reoccurring / happening again. And I kind of knew, like, oh goodness, like what's going on. So that morning I ended up having, so TMI, and like obviously everything that has to do with birth and like newborns and your postpartum body, everything's TMI. So just putting that warning out there right away. The morning of the 9th, I ended up having really bad diarrhea, and I thought I had just drank too much coffee that morning. It was like so painful. Luckily my mom was home, so I called her. She came over. My son had a speech therapy appointment, so she brought him there, and I laid down. I remember feeling so tired, like weirdly so, but I attributed it to that past weekend. My mom and I had been really busy. We went shopping, and then the next day we decorated for Christmas, and so I was like, maybe I just overdid it. So cramping and everything went away. I was fine that night. Then Tuesday, November 10th, I was fine during the day. I actually, thank goodness, showered that morning. I actually ended up filming a few videos for you guys. That was the day that I filmed my 37-week update, and just got stuff done around the house. Jeff is my husband. We were feeling really good because we had decorated for Christmas. Like, we had done all the things that we wanted to do. The only things left that we had to do, which we were saving for the weekend, was like prepping the house, because we knew his parents were coming. His parents are currently staying with us and helping me with the new baby and my toddler, and so we knew that like we just wanted to tidy for them. So we did a little bit of that day, but not a lot, and I kept saying to myself, like, take it easy, you don't want to like do anything over the top. The only like nesting symptom I had was on that day I started like crazy ordering Hugo Christmas presents. Like, as if I wasn't going to be able to order them after the C-section. Like, I just started panicking, thinking like, oh my gosh, does Hugo have everything he needs? Does he have his Christmas presents? Does he have food? Like, and that, now looking back, I'm like, okay, that was probably my body's way of like telling me that this is going to happen fast. So that night, it's still the night of the 10th, Jeff and I, we put Hugo to sleep. We were sitting and eating dinner, and I remember my hips just really bothering me. But for the past week, they had sort of felt like they were being pulled apart a little bit, and like they did feel really sore, especially after I'd experienced those more intense contractions. I think it was the night of the 12th. And so I was just like, okay, like let me go to bed early. It was 8 o'clock at the time. Let me go to bed early and I'll just get a good night's sleep. So I went to bed at 8, woke up at 10, and was like wide awake, like almost like ready to run a marathon. And I got up out of bed, like Jeff had just come to bed, but I didn't hear him come to bed. And so I went out in the living room and I was like, you know what, let me eat a bowl of cereal. Again, super random. I never wake up in the middle of the night, and even if I do, I'm never hungry. So I don't know, but again, like I think it was my body's way of telling me. So I ate a bowl of cereal, and then I was sitting on the couch and I started to feel a little bit crampy, but I also kind of thought like maybe, you know, like maybe it's just uncomfortable. Like maybe I'm just feeling uncomfortable in my body. I didn't really want to watch TV. I vlogged a little bit of me like sitting on the couch, feeling like a little confused as to like what was happening. And then at around 11:30 at night, I started feeling my first contractions, and I was like, you know what, let me try to go back to sleep, because even if these are real contractions, maybe like last time they'll just go away once I fall asleep. So I came back to bed and I laid down, and around midnight I started feeling them like pretty severely, and I was like, okay, I'm definitely not going to be able to fall to sleep or like sleep through these, so let me try to time them. So I pulled out my Pregnancy Plus app. Guys, you know, I've been raving about Pregnancy Plus, the Pregnancy Plus app this entire pregnancy. I love it, but I was so disappointed because when I went to go open the contraction timer, it was like, oh, you can only use this timer if you have the premium version of the app. So I'm like, this is not the time. This is not the time. So I ended up using the, what was it? I think it was the Ovia pregnancy. They had a contraction timer on there. And so I started timing out my contractions, and I'll pull them up now. Started timing them at 12. From about 12 to 12:30, they were definitely, here we go. They were definitely a bit inconsistent, but they were still like happening. And then from about like 12:33 until 1:50, my contractions were on average about 4.5 minutes apart, and they were lasting for anywhere from 40 seconds to like 55 seconds. So at this point, my doctor had said, like, if you start experiencing contractions again and you experience them for more than an hour, give us a call. So I was like thinking, okay, I should probably call them, because at this point now it was close to, at this point it was like close to sort of 1:45. So I woke Jeff up and I was like, we need to get to the hospital, and like I think I should call. And then at 2 a.m. I called, and I talked to my doctor. She was like, all right, why don't we have you come in? Like she asked me like how many contractions I've been feeling, like the severity of them, all those questions. Determined that, yeah, okay, let's come in. I felt so bad because at this point it's like 2:30 in the morning, and I could tell that like she had been sleeping, and I just felt bad. So then I'm like panicking, thinking like, oh my goodness, I need to contact my parents, because my parents need to come and watch Hugo. What am I gonna do with my little toddler here? So called my parents. Luckily they answered in the middle of the night, and my mom drove over, and I think it was around 2:45 when Jeff and I left the house. We had luckily we already had our hospital bags packed. I had written out like a whole list of last minute things I wanted to pack, like my phone and my chargers and my cameras and stuff. So we did all that. Jeff did end up forgetting his toiletry bag of all things. He was totally fine, but we just thought that was funny. So we drove over to the hospital. We got there around 3 a.m. I had never experienced contractions in the car before, and let me tell you, oh my goodness, so uncomfortable. So uncomfortable. It was like that. Contractions in the car is like up there on some of the more like uncomfortable parts of this whole ordeal. So we get to the hospital around 3 a.m. We parked and went in the front entrance, but it was locked. So we realized, okay, we have to go through the emergency room entrance. So we went through there. I had never pre-registered like an idiot, and so I was trying to like fill out some forms as I was having contractions. It was like so like in a movie, like so cinematic, all the cliches of like, we have a million bags and it's in the middle of the night and I'm not like, am I going into labor, am I not, trying to fill out forms. It was like so Father of the Bride Part 2. We were laughing. And so then got into the hospital. Let me pull up my notes again so that I don't forget anything. The hospital around 2:45, came into the ER, I hadn't pre-registered. So then once they took me back and they checked me, I was 2 centimeters dilated, which wasn't like intense. I remember just the checking, cervical check, I guess, was so uncomfortable, because I was also experiencing contractions at that point, again, super frequently and regularly. And so after they had checked me, they asked me to go change into my hospital gown, and at that point I did have red in my discharge, and they said that was totally fine, totally normal. It reminded me of what had happened like a week and a half prior. And so I changed into my hospital gown and she started asking me like a bunch of questions and doing like all of the like, you know, hospital registration stuff. And then I wrote at a little after 3 a.m. they started poking me, and honestly for the C-section, the whole setup was the worst part. So looking back now, after having gone through the entire C-section, I'm sure I'll talk about this more in other videos, but yeah, when they started like setting me up for the C-section, that was the worst and the hardest part, was getting the IV. And she like had tried to do the IV on this arm and it didn't work, and so then she tried doing it on my hand, and like anyone who's had an IV in their hand knows that that's like so uncomfortable. And then the lab came and they were taking blood work, and so like there's just like a lot of poking and prodding that felt really uncomfortable. And at that point I still wasn't convinced, or like I still didn't know if we were really doing the C-section or not. Like no one had said like, okay, yep, we're doing this, like we're gonna get the baby out. And obviously it wasn't an emergency situation, but it was so interesting. Like I still kind of thought like, all right, maybe we're not, like, maybe am I just imagining this? Oh, big burp, good job, honey. So then eventually I heard one of the nurses say that she had talked to the doctor was coming, the doctor checked me and said like, okay, yeah, like these contractions are happening very regularly. And I apologized for being like 3:30 in the morning, and she was like, no, it's fine. And she had said like, if I wasn't having such painful contractions and they weren't happening so frequently, we could maybe, you know, push off the C-section until like 6:30, but because they were happening so frequently and I was really uncomfortable, she wanted to like do the C-section as soon as possible. So at that point, then I heard one of the nurses say that the doctor had called in the surgical team, so I knew that like, okay, this is really happening, we are really having this baby. So then yeah, the nurse shaved me and I'd heard people talk about that on the line before, that like for C-sections you get shaved down there. I just wasn't, you know, you just don't expect it until it happens, but she did it. And we laughed about it, we thought it was funny. Then she inserted the Foley bulb with a catheter. That was really uncomfortable too. That was just like one of the many things that, like the poking and the prodding, that, you know, didn't feel great. Wasn't super painful, but also like didn't feel great. And then I was in the ER by a little bit before 5 a.m. So I remember filming a clip around 4:45, and then yeah, I guess I was in the OR by 5 a.m. And I remember just thinking like, I had never been in an operating room before, and the operating room was like right across from the recovery room. And I just remember it being like, feeling like it was so stark and so empty and clean, obviously, but also that it was like a lot smaller than I was envisioning. I don't know why I thought like it was gonna be this like huge grand room. Probably watched like too much Grey's Anatomy. And then I got in the OR and I sat at the edge of the table, and the anesthesiologist came in, started like talking to me through all of the like the poking and the prodding he was gonna do. I did the hunch over the back, and if you've ever had an epidural, then you know they have you curl over in a C shape, and he inserted the needle into my back. Like, you know, first he scrubbed and did all the sterilization, and that was uncomfortable. It wasn't super painful, but it was definitely uncomfortable, the needle. And then then he said like, oh, you're gonna feel pressure on one side versus the other. Where do you feel pressure? And that pressure kind of was a little bothersome. And then they helped me lay back onto the operating table and like propped my head up with this little blue foam pillow. If you follow me on Instagram, then you know my obsession with that little blue pillow. And then I remember just laying there, and the anesthesiologist came over to my head and he was like, you're going to, like, it's possible that you're going to feel nauseous. Let me know if you feel nauseous. And almost immediately after he said that, I was like, I feel nauseous. Started feeling nauseous. Then he must have given me something else, I guess, that helped sort of tame the nausea, or maybe he pulled back on the anesthetic. I don't know like enough about medicine, but told him I was feeling nauseous. Definitely felt a wave of nausea, but luckily after I told him, it sort of went away. And honestly, like, time and space were sort of standing still at this point, so I can't say exactly around what time this happened. But then as I was laying there, and at this point Jeff was like getting prepared to come into the OR, they started setting up the tarp, that blue tarp that they use to shield you from seeing your body being cut open. I was laying there and they started setting up the shield, and I started feeling like pretty claustrophobic, and I'm claustrophobic anyway. And so I started, like, I remember like touching my chest and like touching my belly, and the anesthesiologist was like, okay, they're gonna start sterilizing your belly and like wiping it down and stuff, so try not to touch your belly. And the minute he said that and I put my arms down, I stopped feeling claustrophobic. And I don't know if that was just like in my head, or if some with more of the medication started streaming through my body. I do remember feeling like the warmth of the anesthesia like traveling down. And again, he like sort of talked me through all of that. I was really appreciative of that. He was like, you're gonna start to feel warm through your legs and through your feet, and maybe like a slight numbing sensation. And at this point I was definitely nervous. I've never had, like I've said, I've never had major surgery before, and so it was definitely like a nerve, like I was nervous and scared, but I wasn't, I don't know, it was so different than anything I'd ever experienced before. And so I just closed my eyes and started breathing, just focusing on my breathing, just focusing on, like, I remember praying a lot, and just remember like focusing on that and just trying to stay as calm and peaceful as possible. So then after feeling claustrophobic, he administered something in my IV that burned really badly. And eventually I was prepped, felt really scared and nervous, found deep breathing, cleaned my eyes closed, helped a lot. And then Jeff came in. So it was really nice when Jeff came in. I felt like I had something else to focus on other than like being nervous. And so I remember when he sat down and we started talking, and I just like knew that he was there, I started feeling, and the feeling that I can most liken it to is if this little guy was still in my belly and was like kicking and moving a lot. That's what the surgery felt like. And I was so nervous and so scared for the part where, like, because I had heard some other people's C-section stories and them saying that, like, oh, they're gonna ask you, they're gonna scrape your belly and they're gonna ask you, like, can you feel this, can you feel this, until you can't feel it anymore, and then they'll start the surgery. And that made me so nervous, because I was like, well, what if I can feel it? Like, what if I say I can't feel it but I actually can feel it? What if I'm not sure? Like, what if they start and then I start feeling it? Like, these are all the things rushing through my head. So that's what I was sort of anticipating. And as I was talking to Jeff, I started feeling like all of this movement in my belly, and I was like, oh, I wonder if they gave me something that like is making him like move a lot in my belly. And that's exactly what it felt like. It didn't hurt, it didn't feel uncomfortable. If anything, it just felt kind of like fun. Like, it felt cool, like just felt like he was moving a lot. And it took me a little while to realize, like, oh duh, that is not him moving, that's the doctors like pushing and moving my stomach around and like getting him prepped to come out. And so I was really grateful that they didn't ask me, and like they didn't tell me when they were starting, they just started. Like, that actually like worked out so perfectly. It didn't give me time to stress, it didn't give me time to like be so anxious or like anticipating them cutting into me, you know, like it was just happening, and it was totally fine. Like, I didn't feel a thing. It was, if anything, it was like the most relaxed and the most comfortable I have been in so long. So I'm laying there talking to Jeff, breathing, again, like keeping my eyes closed when I feel nervous. And then Again, time kind of stood still. I don't know how long it took, but eventually at 5:29 a.m. this little nugget was born. They pulled him out and they said, I heard them say congratulations before I actually saw or heard him, but they were like, congratulations. And then I saw a little foot stick out from the top of the tarp, and Jeff and I looked at each other and I couldn't believe that he was born and that he was here. And so then I sent Jeff over to see him, and Jeff got to be with him while they like cleaned him up a little bit and took all his vitals and stuff. And then the nurse brought him over and Jeff and I got to see him and just be with him, and it was so surreal and so wonderful and just amazing. And then they took him back for more tests and Jeff went with him, and I just laid there and got stitched up. And again, I remember laying there thinking like, wow, I know my baby is safe. I know Jeff is with him. I know that like I can't be anywhere or do anything right now. So I'm just gonna lay here. And again, it was like the most comfortable. And I'm probably in the smallest percentage of people who think that like, think this way, and it's fine. But it was like the most comfortable and relaxed I have been in so long. And granted too, I hadn't slept at all that night. I was so tired, so it just felt kind of nice to lay there. And eventually they were done, and the whole thing start to finish, I think Jeff said was about 40 minutes. And before we knew it, we were back in our recovery room and I got to hold him. And I've had some questions like, oh, how long was it before you got to hold him? And like, did you want to hold him right away? And honestly, like, again, like there was just no time. There was no time and no space throughout this whole thing. And so it didn't feel like I wasn't able to hold him right away. I felt like I was, and it felt like I was able to bond with him right away, and it just felt so good. And so then we were in the recovery room for a few hours. I can't remember how long we were actually in the recovery room, but they started giving me Pitocin to help with the shrinking of my uterus. And oh my gosh, post-labor contractions are the most uncomfortable thing in the entire world. I cannot. They gave me, I think it's called Torvidal to help ease the pain, which was so necessary. And I wrote, yeah, he's perfect. He was sunny side up. He ended up being sunny side up. 6 pounds, 12 ounces, 19.5 inches long. He has brown hair. Can you believe it? My first son is such a blondie and didn't have any hair for like the first year. And he has dark, like we think he has hazel eyes. They look dark blue when he was born, as like most babies' eyes do. And he's just perfect. He's so he's so small. I remember seeing him and thinking like, oh my gosh, he's so tiny. My first son was born, he was 8 pounds, and so in comparison, I think he was 8 pounds and 21 inches long. Was he 21 inches long? Maybe I'm getting that wrong. But in comparison, he is like a tiny little peanut, and he's so light, and it's just incredible. Like even now, it's so surreal. And so yeah, after a few hours in the recovery room, we got moved to our second recovery room. I don't know what you would call the room that like you stay in for a few days. And I'll talk more about that in my like postpartum update videos about how all that went. But honestly, the entire hospital experience was so amazing. All the nurses were fantastic. My doctor was incredible, and it couldn't have gone better. It couldn't have gone smoother. A huge question I've been getting from people who know my story and know my first birthing experience is like, how is it in comparison to your first one, and how's the recovery been in comparison to your 4th degree tear? And let me just say, it has been night and day. I literally could not be happier with my decision to have a C-section. It was and continues to be just a dream recovery. I mean, listen, having a C-section is not easy at all. There are aspects of it that are so incredibly hard, so hard. It is not the easy way out, but it's just different. and it's a different recovery than my 4th-degree tear, but in comparison to what I went through with my first son, in comparison to that recovery, it has been a much smoother journey, and for that I am so incredibly grateful. I just feel so much better, and I'm just so incredibly happy. So yeah, I've been rambling now for so long. I'll show you guys this little guy up close. He's probably getting hungry now. We are breastfeeding. Breastfeeding is going super well. Really, this whole experience has been a dream, and I could not be more blessed and more grateful for every single part of it. That's it. That's Theodore's birth story. Oh, and in case you didn't know, his full name is Theodore Stark Moulton, and he's here. He's finally here. So let me show you up close this little guy. There he is. All right, I'm gonna go feed him now because he's probably really hungry. Thank you guys so much for your love and support this entire pregnancy. And now as we head into postpartum, I've said a few times on my Instagram that I'm just, you know, I'm sad that the pregnancy is over. I'm definitely going to miss it, but I'm so happy he's here, and I could not be happier that we are a little family of 4 now. I'm truly on cloud 9. So all right guys, we will see you in our next video. We love you, and we'll chat